everyone, Jax West from Stephen Avery Project, Justice with Jax, and MAM Gossip. I know when we have done lives recently from my iPad here in Gossip, it's like been very hard for people to comment. When I do them on Stephen Avery Project, there's like no problem. When I do them here, we have difficulties. So just want to put that out there before we get started, that maybe I'm not going to see your messages, your comments. So just a warning up front. If it's something very important that you think I need to include in this discussion and you comment and you don't think it's been seen, you can message me. So, and who am I? Jax West. I am no relation to the Avery family. I am just a supporter like all y'all. A little history about me, since we're going to be discussing the latest crap that's going on with the Avery family. All right. So when Making a Murderer came out, I had not even heard of Making a Murderer. I watched it the weekend it went up on Netflix. So I had no preconceived notions, nothing. So watched it, got very upset with what I saw, and wanted to know more, because I'm somebody who has always been interested in true crime. You know, that I've read true crime books prior to the internet. Once internet came out, I'm like really never reading actual books anymore. But I would watch all the shows and all that. And, you know, so I was very interested in true crime. And when you watch Making a Murderer, you knew that this wasn't current. So, you know, where the story is now. So that's what I wanted. I wanted an update. What is happening? You know, I'm in a Chicago suburb, so I'm not that far from Manitowoc, but I still had never heard anything about this case until Making a Murderer on Netflix. So I started doing the dive. You know, I had never gone to Reddit before, so I was on Reddit. I was looking around on Facebook, and there was this Facebook page called Stephen Avery Project. Stephen Avery Project was founded by this guy, Curtis Bussey, who lives near the area and grew up knowing the case. And so when Making a Murderer came out, he started this, or not this, since this is MAM Gossip, he started Stephen Avery Project right away. He's somebody who always felt that Stephen was innocent. And Stephen Avery Project grew and grew at that time. And eventually Curtis was added to Stephen Avery's visitors list. And so he started going and visiting with Stephen, and then he would do live videos afterwards to tell people about his visit, all that kind of stuff. So Stephen Avery Project had made a post saying that there was going to be a police convention, a town next to me, that Dietering and Fassbender were like special keynote speakers at. And if he were to organize a protest, would anybody be interested? I had never been to a protest before, know anything about those kinds of things. But I said, I messaged him and I said, I live right here. I absolutely will do whatever I can to help with this protest. So first I went to the location where it was going to be, and I videoed that so people could see what it looked like, and then was looking up, how to do a protest by doing it legally. And just so you know, too, I have not seen one person make a comment. So if anybody's commented anything, I have not seen anything. I reached out to the location and let them know that I was organizing a protest. And then I reached out to the local police department and let them know we were organizing a protest, and I wanted all the do's and don'ts to make sure that we were doing this safe and legal. And the police department was very nice. They told me things like, we just couldn't be like in the street, blocking the street. We can't be blocking the driveway. We couldn't have anything vulgar on our signs, all those kinds of things. So we do all this organizing, and Fassbender and Wiegert pulled out. So I'm going to guess us putting this together, they then knew we're not going to go there. They didn't want to have to deal with that. So that got canceled. A friend of mine, somebody that I grew up with, she lived right behind me, grade school on up. And I knew that the guy she had dated when we were in high school, that she had married, we were Facebook friends. We didn't, we don't see each other anymore or anything like that. But I knew from her Facebook posts that her husband had gotten involved in the Amanda Knox case. And so since I was organizing that protest and I didn't know what I was doing, I had reached out to her and asked if maybe her husband would have some suggestions for me to make sure that this was something that was done all correctly. And so from there, it turns out that he is a founder of an organization called Injustice Anywhere, that they advocate for wrongfully accused. And the board of that organization wanted to make Brendan Dassey one of their cases. They were not going to be including Stephen because some people with that organization thought Stephen was guilty, but everybody believed in Brendan's innocence. So he wanted to start a Facebook page called Free Brendan and asked me to moderate it. From there, Strang and Buting were doing their very first tour. And it was going to be kicking off in Milwaukee. And so I got tickets to go to that. And then so did Curtis Bussey, who was running Stephen Avery Project at that time. Curtis paid for tickets for a bunch of the different Avery family to go to. And so we were all at that event. And when that event was over, we met up outside the theater. So I met, it was Carla and her husband Stacy, Barb and her husband Scott Taddock, and then I believe the only other person was what's-his-face, Richard Mahler, the booted juror from Stephen's case. From that, I became very friendly with, first was Carla Chase. Carla and I were friends. And Carla then had me become, let's see, there was, okay, it's hard for me to remember all of this as I'm just going off the top of my head. I went to the salvage yard because I wanted to walk the Pam of God path. And then another thing that was always stuck in my head was the bus driver. And the bus driver saying that she saw Teresa Halbach. And I did not believe that was true. So I wanted to go, show the bus stop and all that as well. So I made the arrangements with Carla to go to the salvage yard. Carla told me to make sure that I text her when I got near the salvage yard because she was not allowed on the property. So she couldn't just hang out there till I get there. Which, okay, wasn't quite understanding that. But whatever. So I get there. First we go in the garage, the salvage yard garage, not Steven's garage. And I'm getting distracted here because I'm trying to see if I've got a picture here to show you on all of that. Okay, so from that initial visit, here's a picture of me, Carla, and Barb at Steven's trailer. And now I got a lot of shit for this picture for the way that I'm holding on to that railing. But I had been making a joke on how guilters will attack us for taking a picture in front of Steven's trailer. And so I made a joke, because I've got a stupid sense of humor, about being on a pole. And so I was just joking about that. And so that's why the picture is like that. But this was my first visit there with, me, Carla, and Barb. And then another picture I wanted to make sure I took when I was there that's on here is Kathleen Zellner had been to the salvage yard around that time, because this is close to when Kathleen first came on the case. And so she had taken a picture and posted it, and she was by some fence at the salvage yard. And then there were a whole bunch of guilters trying to claim that this is a doctored picture, she wasn't there, there is no fence there, blah, blah, blah. So I wanted to make sure that I took a picture by this fence so I could show people there was a fence. So Barb, Carla, and I at the fence. This fence was separating where the residences are at the salvage yard and where the cars are parked in the pit. So there's us in that picture. Me doing the obvious, gotta do the Avery Road sign picture. That's from the first visit. This is from another trip of when my boyfriend Jeff owns a print shop, and he made a new sign for the private road. So we surprised Chuck
you can have all
with
this,
the
but I
sign.
want the old sign so I can hang it on my wall behind my bar. The one down there. The one
This is to replace your handwritten.
Oh,
okay.
And I made you a separate one for the office.
Did you film or something? Yeah.
So there's Scott.
Good job, John.
Now, I know it's not handwritten, but I figured it looked a little more professional for you.
That was a quick job.
So that's a different visit that I had, that I was up there. So, and what was going on in that video is he has a handwritten sign, which I actually have, but it's upstairs in a room that my nephew's in. A handwritten sign saying private road, no trespassing. Not trespassing, trespassing. And so Jeff made him a sign for that then mimicked the big sign they have at the road to make it look more professional. And he surprised Chuck and gave him that sign, as well as Jeff also made them new business cards for the salvage yard. You know, nobody was charged anything. Another time when I went to see Strang and Buting, this time when they were in Chicago, Buting he bumped me up. And I had bought seats, but then he gave me free seats that had me sitting right next to his wife. And then he had me come backstage. And so there's Buting and I. This picture is from the first rally. I actually organized the first summer rally at the Manitowoc Courthouse. And it became such complete drama by people wanting to be the boss of this event and wanting to be in the press and all this stupid shit. And the whole purpose of the event was being completely lost. And so a couple days before the event, I was on the phone with Carla, who was my friend, I thought, at the time. And Carla told me if she wanted, she could pull rank and tell us what we can or can't do. And I said, no, that's not the way this works. And ever since then, Carla Chase and her minions have been out to get me. We had printed all the shirts, signs, a whole bunch of stuff for that rally. Jeff and I did not attend now, and it's a big, long story. There's so much more to it. I'm trying to keep it shorter. Jeff looked into shipping the stuff up there still, but it was going to cost too much. So what we ended up doing is there was another supporter who was going to the rally, and so we met them halfway to Manitowoc and gave them all the stuff for this rally. And that person too later made posts trying to claim like Jeff and I ripped people off and didn't give people stuff that they had ordered when we had given it to them and given so much extra. So this here is a picture of Barb and Scott at that first rally. They're both wearing shirts that I printed and they didn't pay for, as well as a special sign that Barb wanted made for Brendan that we made and they didn't pay for either. So here's that. And I'm going over all of this not to be a look at me, I'm so cool. I just want you to know my history with the family. That, you know, I kind of I kind of know some stuff and not just talking shit. This is a picture of a letter that Brendan sent Carla telling her off. I've got cajillions of pictures. Here's when I went to Brendan's hearing here in Chicago, and it was a couple people behind in line with Ken Kratz. Here's when Buting was on his book tour, and I went and saw him, and I got so ripped by Carla's people for how I was dressed, because I said I was inappropriate. I mean, did you see the way the Avery families went to court? And they're going to say I was inappropriate with how I was dressed. Okay then. Hold on. Here's one of my visits with Dolores. Dolores's favorite dog, Bandit, who died. Me on the floor with Bandit. is that all the pictures I wanted to show offhand? I mean, and then, you know, I have visited with Stephen. So there's me giving you some receipts. And I still have not seen a single comment, just so people know. So I don't know what it is when I do these on why it doesn't give me people's comments. Wait, now there's people who said I have people commenting. Yay! I don't know why all of a sudden I'm seeing some comments, but let me continue on, all right? So there's a little bit of my background. You know, I've been to Carla's house, I've been to Barb's house. There. So the reason I'm doing this video is, I'm sure you've seen here in Gossip the screenshots that are being posted about what's happening in the family fan group. About Dolores having dementia and being in a home, and that Kayla and Brittany had posted things bitching about Stephen, even going so far as to say that he's guilty. Carla allowing that talk where you can't say anything negative about Bobby, but it was okay for people to say things negative about Stephen. Now, I'm somebody who's going to call things as I see it. It doesn't matter how I feel about any of the Averys, or Stephen for that matter. And some of you may not like what I have to say, but I have to say it. I have to call things as I see it. Stephen is very hard-headed, all right? And Stephen thinks he can control everybody around him. So I think a lot of what Carla has posted and that Brittany and Kayla are talking about is true. I do feel it is true that Stephen is freaking out about where his mother is and how she's being treated, and that when he's available to use the phone and call, that they're not letting Dolores talk to him. I totally understand she has dementia and she may not understand the phone or even who Stephen is. It's such a complex thing that's going on. I can absolutely see Stephen blaming Kayla, that if he tries to call that facility and he's not able to talk to his mother, he's going to blame Kayla since she works there. And he's going to lash out at Kayla. All right? So I do believe that Stephen talks to on the phone miscellaneous people, and he'll complain about this or that, and that these people may do something on Stephen's behalf. I don't know if Stephen would tell somebody to go online and give a negative review of the housing facility, because I don't know if Stephen would even understand all of that. But what Stephen would know is his mom had bed sores, moved to a new facility, and he can't talk to her. So that is just going to send Stephen into a frenzy, and he's not going to listen to people. first of all, he doesn't like his family. It doesn't matter how much Carla's going to show you a picture of that she talked to Steven on the phone. Steven does not like Carla. She's, what he feels is, bottom line, she's family. So he doesn't like her, but she's family. That's what it's going to be. And Carla named herself early on in all of this as the family spokesperson. Even though nobody asked her to do that. She'll claim they did, but nobody did. It's just a way that Carla wanted to put herself out there to be the star of the show. So when Steven is desperate to get any kind of information about his mom, of course he's going to reach out to Carla to ask about it. I know Carla posted something claiming that there were arrangements made through Steven's lawyers for a certain time and place for Steven to call. I don't know if that is fact or fiction. Don't know. You know, if you've listened to any of the jail calls, that when Steven was in jail, that's completely different than prison. When you're in prison, you don't get to just use a phone whenever and however you want. It's a fight to get the phone. So who knows if when something is set up, that's when Steven's able to do it. So I could see Steven's frustration of whenever he calls Dolores, because he's not going to be calling her every day, 20 times a day like he did when he was in jail. But they should make arrangements for him to talk to Dolores. And I think it was Kayla who said that Dolores doesn't even know what a phone is. And somebody else had said, well, use a speakerphone. And somebody said who knows about patients with dementia, it's very important to have a routine. So Steven should be able to talk to his mother, but I'm sure he's also made himself a nuisance to that home. Because he thinks he runs the show. He told me over and over again when I used to talk to him, he runs the salvage yard even though he's in prison. And he's the one that tells them to purchase this and do that. And, you know, everybody needs to just follow his orders. And so I know that many in the family do not like Steven because he's a jerk to them. But then when you look on the other side of that is, how long was Steven in prison that they all completely ignored him? No visits, no calls, nothing. So, and how many times did different people in his family say that he was guilty to the press? So, it's a very toxic relationship. I do not like when Carla is claiming that they're going to be moving Dolores to another facility and not let Steven know where she is. And saying that the last time Steven talked to Dolores will be the last time he gets to speak to his mother. That's not right. Dolores is the only person who has been behind Steven 100%. Even when, if you listen to those jail calls, there were times that Steven was an asshole to his mom, threatened to sue her. I tell you guys all the time, Steven doesn't have to be the best guy in the world. You don't have to like Steven. I'm not saying he's a great guy. Just know he's innocent in this, and people did things to frame him. That's where I stand. I'm not going to tell you that you want Steven for your BFF. But his mom is the only person who has always been there for him. And if you try to keep Dolores away from Steven, he's not going to stop. He's not going to quit. Ever. Now, okay, so Ev is saying she is Steven's mother, not Kayla's. Let me speak out on Kayla. All right? I've had a very up and down relationship with Kayla. And I still, even though Kayla has said some very awful things to me and about me, I still have sympathy for the girl. All right? That first time when I met with the Avery family, they were talking so much shit to me about Kayla. And I was like offended by it because she's just this little girl. All right? And I look at her the way I look at Brendan. She doesn't have the highest of IQs. All right? Like most of the Avery clan. They're all, not all, a lot like that. She was coerced, Fassbender and Wiegert, into saying things that weren't true to help their narrative, to get Steven. And they needed to implicate Brendan to get to Steven. And so Kayla, unfortunately, was just a piece to that. Kayla had the balls, I shouldn't say balls, the guts, when she was on the stand to say the things she said previously were not true. I don't care how old you are, that takes guts to sit up on the stand and say you lied when you could be prosecuted for it. They're going after your uncle and your cousin, so they could go after you for that. But she said on the stand that she lied. Kayla is somebody who I would describe as hyper. You know, she's a bundle of energy and will talk really fast. But overall, she's very sweet. And she loves her grandma. She calls Dolores her best friend. She would go over there and wash Dolores's hair and do her hair. And if you ever see pictures of Dolores with Kayla, you see Dolores's face light up. How many times do you see a picture of Dolores where she has a smile on her face? The woman has had a hard, hard life. And so when you see pictures of her, she looks in misery. You know, a lot of the Avery family have used her because they know that all of us real supporters, we have a soft spot when it comes to Dolores. So what better way for them to get attention but to wheel her out to a rally that she doesn't even want to be at? So, look, there's Dolores. Let's take pictures of Dolores. And she's miserable. But if you see pictures of her with Kayla, she's smiling. If you've listened to any of the calls, and if there's a call that you hear Kayla and Dolores together, you'll hear her giggle like a schoolgirl. Kayla makes her happy. So I have absolute no doubt that Kayla would take good care of her grandma. Did she do everything that is expected of her? Because see, there was a time where Steven was paying Kayla to stay with Dolores and take care of her at the trailer. But then the family, who always have some issues against Kayla and want to bitch about her, are then in Steven's ear claiming Kayla's not doing this, Kayla's not doing that, blah, 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 blah. And then they claimed that Kayla was stealing money from Dolores. So Stephen fired her. So let me tell you about that. Let me go back to these pictures real quick. That picture of me and Dolores. Let me find that picture again. All right. When I went and visited Dolores that day, I had brought her a bunch of cash. The different moderators we have here, or not here, well, they're here too in Gossip, but from Stephen Avery Project, they all donated some cash for me to give to Dolores. And then I also had a Visa card, gift card that I got for something or another that was sitting here. So I was giving that to her as well. So Dolores wanted to be able to remember who gave her that. That's also why I knew, and this picture's from how long ago? This picture's from 2018. August 4th, 2018. That's why I knew back then that she was in early dementia, because she wanted to make sure she wrote this down. And then when I told people about this, Carla accused me of lying, that I didn't give her any money and blah blah blah, because Dolores didn't whatever. Now, first of all, Dolores didn't trust Carla, told me herself. So when I give her cash, it doesn't mean the family's gonna know, right? And so I was taking a ton of crap from people with Carla accusing me of lying about that. And the friend that went with me when I visited Dolores and took this picture, she then said to me, she's like, the notebook's right in front of her, as well as the Visa card that I had given her. So there's the notebook that she was writing down the names in, and over there's the Visa gift card. And also, see, and Carla used this against me too, going, look at how miserable Dolores looks. Well, as I said, she never has a, she puts on a stoic face, except for when she's with Kayla. Then she smiles and is all happy. So, Kayla was fired. It turns out she did not steal the money they were accusing of being stolen. It was Carla's brother, Christopher, who stole the money. But Kayla was again ripped apart by people online, like she was horrible to Dolores. And she wasn't. She loves her grandma. The Avery family have never taken good care of Dolores. Alan Avery stays in Crivets almost all the time. Has for years. Carla gets very mad when I say that, because she claims I'm trying to make it out like Alan and Dolores are not together as a couple or whatever. Just saying, he prefers Crivets, so he stays up there most of the time. Dolores prefers to be at the salvage yard, and so she stays there. So something when, because Kayla and I used to text back and forth. And so one day Kayla told me that she's been saving her money because she wants to buy an air conditioner for her grandma. That in her entire life, Dolores has never had air conditioning. Kayla said she had asked her dad, Earl, and Chuck to give Dolores an air conditioner. They didn't care. Nobody cared. So then I told Kayla, I've got one sitting in my shed that we don't even use. I'll bring it up there, and Jeff will put it in for Dolores. Just a window unit. She lives in a trailer. She doesn't need much. It's just a trailer, a little trailer. So a simple window unit is good enough that will keep Dolores cool. And I posted about it, that I was going to bring Dolores an air conditioner, And the next thing you know, Chuck and Earl put an air conditioner at Dolores's. So it wasn't until I've said something and I'm going to do something that those guys were putting in an air conditioner for their mother, who had lived her entire life without air conditioning until that point. And it all comes from Kayla being concerned about her grandma. Then you'll have Carla doing all these fundraisers, saying Dolores needs this, Dolores needs that. I know this is hard for people to understand, but the Averys are not poor. And if Dolores needed a handrail to help herself get on and off the toilet, why did you not do that? Why are you now asking for donations from people to make it easy for Dolores to use the toilet? That's severe neglect. And you want to talk crap about Kayla? Natalie is mentioning the washer-dryer saga. This was what caused Stephen to be upset with me, and I haven't spoken to him in a couple of years now. Since 2018, probably, or 2019. 2019. They made a post, Carla made a post saying that Dolores's washer and dryer were broken. She needed a new washer dryer, and so they're expecting the supporters to pay for it. And here's the GoFundMe where you could put money in for that. I went on live and told people, do not give them money. You do not give money that is going through an Avery family member, because they cannot be trusted. I have witnessed from other events them pocketing money. So I told people, if you wanted to help Dolores, to send the money either directly to Dolores, put it in Stephen's commissary, because he can take money back out and send it to his mom, or send it to Kathleen Zellner and make a note that you want this money to go to Dolores. But do not give it to that family. But what's been reported to Stephen is I was talking shit about Dolores and telling people not to help her get her a refrigerator or a washer and dryer. Again, Dolores is his number one priority. So I don't blame him for getting upset if that's, what he's being told. But then again, I do blame him because this is the second time around that people have told him lies about me that he then didn't speak to me. And when this happened the first time, and then 6 months later, all of a sudden out of the blue, Stephen calls me. And, so when I answer the phone and he's like, well, hey, stranger, bet you're surprised to hear from me. And so I said to him in that call going, Stephen, because he told me what it was, Sandra Greenman, and then her friends, Tracy Strunzi and Angie something or another. So those were the three that were telling Stephen lies about me that got him to not speak to me for those 6 months. And actually, why he then reached out to me those 6 months later is they then wanted Stephen to just not have anything to do with me anymore and only be with them. And then they got put on his visitors list and was making it out like, look at us, look at us. And so then what happened, according to Stephen, what he told me, was that Sandy Greenman got really upset because these two girls, Sandy considers or did at the time, like her BFFs, even though she's way older than them. So her having Stephen put them on the visitors list, they used to go visit Stephen together. And then it started being that Tracy and Angie would go visit Stephen without Sandy. So now Sandy was feeling like she was being pushed out and that these girls just used her to get to Steven. And so she told Steven to take those girls off his list. And then for some reason, Steven listened to her and then called me. And because of the timing and all that, then that's when Sandy and those girls and Carla and everybody had this big freak out. And they said it was my fault that those girls were removed from the list. And then Steven had said he was putting me on the list. And so they all, Sandy made the post, Carla made the post. They were all making these posts saying that if Steven puts me on the list, they're never going to talk to him again. They're not going to support him anymore. They're only going to support Brendan, all because the man was talking to me. When I had nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with Tracy or Angie being taken off his list. I wasn't even talking to him. It was their good buddy Sandy that told Steven to do it because she was jealous. But Sandy doesn't let them know that because they still are that whole fake friends thing. So then, all of a sudden, Steven's not talking to me again. And then Sandy makes some posts, because in this time too is when Sandy started her own group. And wanting to be, this is the official Steven group, blah, blah, blah. And so then she made some post saying, Steven wanted me to make this post to say that he's removed Jax from his visitors list and he's got nothing to do with Steven Avery Project and blah, 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 because I talked shit about Dolores, which I didn't do. Dolores is the only Avery I will not talk shit about. There is nothing that woman has done that I feel is something to complain about. So Steven was lied to again. And when I talked to him after the first time, I had said to him, please, if anything like this happens again, reach out to me first. Give me the opportunity to explain if need be, but he didn't. So that's what I would blame Steven for in this last go round, is that he didn't contact me, and he should know better, because Steven and I talked all the time about Sandy and such and all these people and how two-faced they are, because like when Steven got into that relationship with that horrible Dr. Phil nasty piece of crap, Sandy got very jealous, and she sold a nasty story about Steven to the tabloids, saying he was guilty. Steven doesn't forget that she did that. So when Sandy doesn't get her way with Steven, that she gets to control who he talks to, and it seems like he gets chummy with another woman, she's going to do whatever she can to try and poison that. And then she'll mislead people to try and make it out like they're still a couple when they're not a couple and will never be a couple, because Steven, when he's free, wants to get married and have children. She is old enough to be his mother. She's not having children. So back to the drama, of the current drama. Kayla's upset. I'm sure she has gotten in trouble at work with whoever Steven. Oh, and I just got notified that Brad is posting stuff on Twitter right now that is interesting. So he's been sharing his stuff on Facebook as well. So if you want to check out the Brad stuff. Steven, all he knows is that his mom's health is deteriorating and he wants to talk to her. And he's not able to. And so whoever these people are that he currently talks to on the phone, they're believing Stephen on things that he's saying. And so they're attacking that facility. I don't know that you can say that what Stephen is saying is correct. Unless I talk to Stephen directly, I don't know. So Carla has shown over and over again that she cannot be trusted. So I can't take anything that Carla says at face value. So I'm only thinking about this from what I know from my past associations with these different people and how Stephen has talked to me about people and things. So I can totally see him getting very upset and very demanding and saying things that could put Kayla's job in jeopardy. Kayla's got every right to be upset about that. But she should not be saying she thinks Stephen is guilty, making a post on that, because I know she doesn't think that. And she's saying that out of anger. And I get it. Word vomit. I say things all the time that as it's coming out of my mouth, it's like, oh my God, that's really bad. I shouldn't say that. I've gotten myself in trouble I don't know how many times saying things that I should have taken a pause, thought about it a little bit before I released the word vomit. But I know Kayla doesn't think Stephen is guilty. She may not like him. She's got every right not to like him. I get it. She's got every right to be mad at him because I do truly feel like he's doing something that would be causing her trouble at work. And I have 100% confidence that Kayla is a benefit working where Dolores is living. I made a post about that before all this crap all of a sudden came out, because somebody had sent me something and showed me a picture of Kayla with Dolores. And so I made a post here in Gossip on how that made me feel good to know that Dolores was where Kayla worked. Because I know how much that girl loves her grandma. And I just think people, they demand too much out of Kayla. Stephen included. There's only so much Kayla can do. But Stephen, also with the low IQ, people forget Stephen has even a lower IQ than Brendan. Stephen doesn't comprehend that. Stephen is just flailing because his mom is sick and wants somebody to help her, anybody to help her. And so Kayla is doing everything she can, but Stephen thinks there should be more. And so Stephen lashing out like this is also now what Kayla's doing and lashing back out to Stephen by making those posts. And then Brittany, her sister, standing up for Kayla and posting some stuff, so it was done out of anger. And I know those girls do not think that Stephen is guilty. And I know and I do not know Brittany at all. But I have no doubt that both those girls love their grandma and want the best for their grandma. Carla, on the other hand, no. Carla could care less. She just needs Dolores to keep herself popular. Because look at the posts that were made when Kayla was saying that that Carla should just close that group. There was nothing in there on, nope, we're going to keep going until our boys are free. Nope, we're going to keep pushing that they're innocent. None of that. It's, no, I'm keeping this group because I've put a lot of time in and I've made a lot of friends who are better to me than my family. Me, 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 me. The group is good for Carla. It does nothing for Stephen or Brendan. Nothing. Both Stephen and Brendan have asked her numerous times to shut that group down. They've asked her to take her name off, or their names off of it. That they want nothing to do with it. They do not want Carla being the boss of their likeness. But Carla likes the attention, and that she gets these friends, and people then come and visit her and send her money and gifts and Red Lobster gift cards, trips to a spa. Kim Ducat, or however you, I don't know if it's Ducat, how do you say her last name? She hasn't really been on social media in a while, and unfortunately a few months ago, one of her kids died. So I have thought about reaching out, because I did text Kim at the time that her son died to make sure she was okay. And I have thought about in all this mess if I should reach out to her again just to make sure she's okay. Because I know that a lot of this has been so hard for Kim, especially with what she revealed when I went up there and went to Kim's house and we did that interview of what Chuck Avery did to Kim when she was a little girl, and that Kim knows from other people of things that Chuck has done to others in the family. So, and Kim, Kim doesn't hate the family. She would like everything to, everybody to be able to get along. Kim is somebody, other than Dolores, has always supported Stephen and believed in his innocence, but people are keeping her away from Stephen and not letting her have contact with him, not letting her visit, not letting him call her. So Monica, yes, Chuck and Earl have both done some nasty things with family members. Yes. But Kim is a sweetheart. She also has health issues. So I don't even think Kim's in this group anymore. Not sure. And I think she mainly did things when she did on Twitter. And I don't really go on Twitter. I'm more of a Facebook only person. So I have Twitter and I go on there for like when Kathleen tweets something, but I'm not a Twitter person. So, yeah, but this latest I find very interesting though too, that it was in this filing, fingers are pointed again at Bobby Dassey. And Carla says, I'll break our rule and let you have a thread or two to discuss Bobby, but you can't say anything negative about him. But then they allowed all these nasty things to be said about Stephen. And by not allowing people to discuss the whole Bobby thing, you're just keeping Stephen and Brendan in prison. Everything keeps pointing at Bobby. And instead of considering it, looking into it, anything, they're right away defending him. And none of them are close to Bobby. except for Barb. The brothers don't get along. Something somebody brought up to me was when we were listening to all the Brendan jail calls, how many times was he on the phone with his mom? And she said, "You want to talk to Bobby?" And he said, "No." Brendan didn't care to talk to Bobby. Let me get on the Barb Bobby thing since people are talking about that. I do have sympathy for Barb. I really do. I think she is choosing not to see it and is doing everything she can to not have to listen to it. She doesn't want to believe any of her boys could have done this. So I'm not faulting her for defending Bobby. That's her kid. Just like she'll say that Brendan is innocent, she's saying Bobby is innocent. She's choosing not to look at the evidence or listen to the evidence. Just like the Hall box won't listen to the evidence and just think Stephen is guilty. She did do many things wrong. She did not look out for Brendan. She did not push to be in the room with him when he was interrogated. She did not properly protect her son. She also has that low IQ. They told her it would be best for her not to be in that room. And instead of being the mother that we all think we would be if in the same instant, we all think that there's no way we would let them question our child without us in there. You don't actually know. You're going to say you knew. You know that. But maybe you would be convinced by police if they sat there and told you you don't want to be in there. I don't know. Maybe you know you would and you would be in there. I don't know. This was a major thing when we put together the juvenile interrogation protection law, the petition for that it says that you could not interrogate a juvenile without a lawyer present, not a parent. When we initially wrote it, it was a parent or lawyer present. But I consulted with Laura Nyrider, one of Brendan's attorneys, when we were putting it together and asked her for her notes on it. And one of her notes was a parent shouldn't be in that room. A parent could make it worse. And I had to stop and think on it to go, she's absolutely right. Because if I'm in a room and police are accusing my son of raping and murdering a woman, and I know well enough that he would never have done that, I'm going to go crazy. And all that word vomit's going to come out. And so the things I'm saying may not be in my son's best interest. Plus, I don't know the law. So you need a lawyer in that room. And it would probably be best for me, and this is for me personally. You know, you all may not be as hot-headed as I am. But even if I was to go in the room with the understanding that I am to stay quiet, let the lawyer talk, I might go off. If you say something that really pisses me off about my son, or I don't have a good poker face And so I'd be doing a lot of the passive aggressive, you know, so a lawyer is what is needed in the room with anybody, not just juveniles. Oh, Jeff, shut up. Not just juveniles, everybody across the board. You know, not just if you have a low IQ, not all adults. I absolutely would need a lawyer present. We do not know the law. We need a lawyer there. So, has Barb been the best mom? Absolutely not. She's been a horrible mother. We know from the times that she's spending out at Scott's house, she has 2 school-aged children home alone. And she's spending the night at her boy toy's house. The guy she's having an affair with. Over there on school nights instead of home with her kids. We know that Stephen and Barb had arguments over where Stephen was saying those kids aren't going to amount to anything because Barb isn't parenting them. We know the rumors that Bobby was selling drugs and car parts out of the salvage yard. We know Barb was arrested with a considerable amount of marijuana, which allegedly was Scott's. Barb hasn't been a great mom. I don't think she's ever been set up with the proper tools to be a good mom. But I do believe she loves her boys. All of them. And she's just refusing to see the truth about Bobby. And so you see now the family has been kind of imploding since this new witness, I keep wanting to say has come forward, but we don't know if this witness didn't come forward to Kathleen a while ago and it's taken this long to check his story that Kathleen felt comfortable to use it. So, because you know, it's something that everybody keeps complaining about is why now? Why after all this time is when he's come forward? But it's not why now. The guy came forward on November 5th, 2005. And he was told, we already know who did it. Okay. Then after making a murderer 1, he went to Strang and Buting. Nobody got back to him. And now we know he's also talked to Kathleen Zellner. We don't know when he reached out to her. So Kathleen tweeted, was it yesterday? That they've got tips and this and that should be able to tell us soon who is the other person that the witness saw with Bobby Dassey. So we need to just wait. Go ahead and have your theories. You know, everybody likes discussing this and investigating and, you know, all of that. But don't get upset and don't, point fingers because we don't know yet. Kathleen can't show all of her cards. You know, so we'll be here like we have since December of 15. No. Numbers. 2015 when Making a Murderer came out. So we'll still be here waiting for when this comes out. But I wanted to come on today because more posts were made last night talking about Dolores and taking Dolores away from Steven. And that really, really upsets me. So I understand the anger that Kayla would have if actions Steven is taking or people on his behalf are taking that could hurt her at her job. And not only that, then removing Dolores from the facility that Kayla's at and putting her somewhere else, then Kayla doesn't have as much access to her grandma and wanting to make sure that her grandma is okay. I understand all that anger, and they're justified in that anger. Kayla is justified in that anger. But you need to try and put yourself in Steven's shoes. Nobody else is in prison. Nobody else has lost, other than Brendan, has lost their lives like Steven has. They have had all these years with Dolores. So Steven is freaking out because his mom is hurt, his mom is sick, and in his eyes, people aren't letting him talk to her. And if they remove her from that facility and not give Steven access to Dolores, you think that's going to fix anything? It's going to make everything worse. Carla trying to, as she posts, I've tried explaining it to him. Carla's not the one to explain it to Steven. He doesn't like her. He doesn't trust her. I don't know who could be that person. Because everybody in Steven's life, everybody, has screwed him over. So I don't know who that would be. I don't know if he would listen to Kathleen. Like I said, Steven can be very hard-headed. Especially when it's coming to his mom. This, though, breaks my heart so much. Because I've always said that this is something that would be the biggest travesty in this case, is that Steven does not go free in time to spend some quality time with his mom. You can't get back all these years. Not just for Teresa Halbach, you got the Penny Bernstein case too, that he was gone for 18 years. Out for 2, then back in again. And from what Kayla has been saying, Dolores' dementia is pretty bad at this stage. That she said Dolores doesn't even really know who they are any longer or what a telephone is. I'm sure Steven can understand what dementia is. Just let him talk to his mom. Just let him talk to her. But somebody, and I don't know who, there needs to be somebody who can put a firm plan in place of, Steven, you can only talk to your mother once a week on this day at this time. And that Steven has to abide by that. I don't know if that's something that can be arranged with the prison, that he can have. I mean, I don't know. Could they make it like a lawyer visit? You know, so like he's going to a room to have a lawyer visit, but talks to his mom? I don't know. I don't know what the real answer is. I just know if you take Dolores away from Steven, it's going to get worse, not better. It just is. And it is so sad to me that Steven is losing his mom. And I feel bad for Kayla because I know Kayla loves her grandma and wants to make sure she's doing all right. And due to Steven being upset, it's now hurting Kayla. So I feel for both of them. People may be surprised to hear that from me, but that's that. I feel bad for Kayla too. Monica, looking at comments now. Does Jody still think Steven is guilty? Oh yeah. She doesn't think Steven's guilty. She just says it because she wants to hurt him because she's an idiot. She knows he's not guilty because she was on the phone with him. So Jody she's not with Steven anymore. And that's another problem with this case as well, that they came after her because they just wanted to cut Steven off at the knees. So now we're going to break up his relationship. Where Jody even got in trouble when she was in court for something and she and Steven passed each other. It's like, oh, well, we had this rule that you couldn't be within this much feet of him or blah, blah, blah. And now you broke that. So they did everything they could to destroy Jody and Steven's relationship. It was a toxic relationship. They're better off not being together. But it's just something else that was done to Steven in this quest to destroy him. In the Penny Bernstein case, they took away his wife and his 4 children, his newborn twins. Cost his mother how much money over those years of her making copies of all of his court documents, the visits, those phone calls. I mean, he was costing his mother thousands of dollars in phone calls. And now this go around. Cost him $36 million. And now his mother. Family drama will keep going. In this group, MAM Gossip, this is where I try to keep the talk of the family drama. You know, there's a lot of people who just want to sympathize with the family. And if I speak negatively about any of the family members, they take it as an attack on Steven and Brendan, which is not. I completely believe in Steven and Brendan's innocence. But I also believe that family has had a lot to do with why those 2 men are in prison for something they didn't do. And the evidence points to Bobby Dassey. Going where the evidence goes. It's all you can do. Does Jody think Brendan is innocent? Yes, she does. Jody had a very good relationship with Brendan. You'll even hear that in the phone calls. of Brendan wanting to talk to Jody. But then due to all the crap that they, Manitowoc does, they're trying to keep Brendan and Jody apart as well. So Jody was one of the few people that treated Brendan well. So I don't believe for a second that she thinks Brendan is guilty. Just like I know she doesn't think Stephen is guilty because she was on the phone with him. She knows that Stephen is not killing, raping, burning, destroying a person while on the phone with her. Oh yes, Lori, Stephen's first wife, has been married to Pete Dassey for a long time. Lori likes to stay completely out of it. When you look at Brendan's visitation list, there were times that Lori would go with Pete to visit Brendan. But yeah, Lori stays out of it. But is very bizarre, right? That Lori is Stephen's first wife, the mother of his 4 children, is married to Brendan's dad. But you have a lot of that up there, because remember that Barb was married to Tom Yonda, and now she's married to Scott Taddock. He and Tom Yonda are cousins. Then you have on the Halbach family, Teresa Halbach's father dies, and so then her mother marries her brother-in-law, her dead husband's brother. So, and then you have Chuck constantly making the moves on Jody. I don't know what Lori thinks about Stephen. What is this? Do you think the 2 men could have been moving the RAV4 for Stephen and that's why the family is so mad? Absolutely not. I do not. Stephen has nothing to do with this whatsoever. Let's go into, I know this was supposed to be family drama. Let's go into this. I talked about it some yesterday on Stephen Avery Project, but let's talk about it here. I don't know the circumstances of this car being pushed on Avery Road. I've seen people discuss, well, how can you push the car if you don't have the key? Who's to say Bobby doesn't have the key? How could he have pushed the car from that far? Who says he pushed the car that far? Who says he didn't drive the car from the dam over to the salvage yard and then pushing it the rest of the way because he doesn't want anybody to notice the car? Who's to say that that the other guy, the 6 foot tall, 8 to 10 inch beard, bigger guy in his 50s or 60s in a puffer jacket, didn't think he wasn't just helping Bobby move the car? But he should know by now there's more to do with that car. I'm not sure when Avery's went to Crivets. So, were they still home on that November 5th morning at dawn? And that's why the car needs to be pushed, because there are people sleeping there and you don't want to bring attention to it. Maybe they ran into battery trouble halfway down the road, because there is all this talk on this battery is not the correct battery for that car and is actually a battery that would be in a police cruiser, and that the battery cables were disconnected. Were they disconnected to disable a key fob? There was no key fob on the magic key. So where is her key fob? That car has one. Why wouldn't she have it? Why wouldn't that be on her daily keys. Also, if you read testimony, there is a friend of Teresa's who testified to this, as well as Thomas Pierce, that owns the photography studio she worked at. Both talked about Teresa having an extreme paranoia of losing her keys. That's why there's the lanyard on it. That's why her sisters got her a lanyard. And that when she had gone on vacation with the friend in August, a joke was made out of making a lanyard out of like duct tape to make it easy to keep track of her keys. Keys, plural. So if you are so paranoid about losing your keys, would you only have one key? Where's her house key? Where's the photography studio key? Betcha she's got a key to her parents' home that was next door. Where's all the rest of the keys? And where's the key fob? Who doesn't have the thing that you can easily unlock your car? So, doesn't make sense to me that she's only having one key on half a lanyard. And it's not even your regular key. It's the valet key that has no wear and tear on it. So we don't know if does Bobby have her keys with the fob? So did law enforcement plant the valet key that they got from Teresa's home? Meanwhile, Bobby's had the real keys with the fob all the time. We don't know. So we can come up with our theories, discuss this over and over and over again, but until Kathleen shows us the evidence, we don't know. We don't know why they were pushing the car. We just know what this witness says, who was delivering newspapers early in the morning on November 5th, 2005. You would be dropping them off at the mailboxes. There's also, so when you turn right there and then the mailboxes are right there, then there's a left to turn into where the office is. And that's where it's an easy, you can turn around real quick right there. So, or you could even, if you wanted to, which I'm sure is what the school bus would do, is you turn left into the office parking lot, where also Dolores's trailer is right across from where the office is, the office and the garage. You could just keep driving straight and it connects to here and then goes back out to 147. You know, so you don't have to go in reverse. You could just drive in that circle back around. So this man says he knows it was Bobby Dassey. His lights were on. If Bobby Dassey was sitting in the car and like driving it or something, and he's in a dark car with the door shut and a window up, maybe he wouldn't be able to recognize a person. The door is open. Bobby is pushing. The guy's headlights are on that person. So driving in to drop off the newspapers, you're seeing Bobby's back. And I'm sure Bobby would turn around and look at you when a car's pulling up. Then when he turns around and comes back around, now you're coming straight towards him. Bobby's near the middle of the road with the door open, pushing the car. And then he says Bobby stepped over into his lane to try and stop him. And that he went off into a ditch to get around him to leave. And I know that, okay, and there's Michelle asking, is there a shallow ditch on beside Avery Road? This is always going to be up to your interpretation on what the word is. What you consider a ditch. All right. It's just a gravel road that's going there. And then grass on the side. How much it slopes down, I don't know. I don't recall. I'll have to look back because I've got whole photo albums of pictures I've taken on my trips there. So is it a big, deep ditch? No. And if it was a big, deep ditch, is he going to get stuck? No. So he's going off-road. He's going off the gravel road to go around Bobby and continue driving away. So I'm sure that's what's meant by it. So, the guy says he came forward right away and was told by a female, we already know who did it. Well, that completely adds up with what's been done in the past by law enforcement. Penny Bernston is reporting an assault, which I have to clarify on that as well, because there are people who keep claiming that Penny Bernston was raped. She was not. It's not taking away from the assault and battery that she got. And the person was attempting to rape her. She was never raped, and the total incident took place in like 7 minutes. It was very short because Penny was able to beat him off. So she was not raped. So when you're seeing people who are saying things like Penny Bernston's rape and that all this wackadoo stuff that like police were watching her get raped in this whole thing to try and set up Stephen, those are wackadoos. Didn't happen. Not happening. But when Penny Bernston goes to report her assault, automatically told, that sounds like Stephen Avery. To be fair, the guy she described does look an awful lot like Stephen. But Stephen had watertight alibi. Receipts showing where he was at Burger King and what home store he had gone to buying paint or something like that. And his wife Lori and the children were with. But there you have law enforcement jumping to the assumption right away, that sounds like Stephen Avery. And then when Teresa Halbach happens, even though Stephen was not her last appointment, Stephen was her second appointment. Zippers were the third. They're right away saying Stephen's the last person to have seen her alive. They're jumping to that. They changed the order so they could say that she was last at Stephen's. Let's take his shoes in case we have other unsolved crimes to use against Stephen. So I don't doubt for a second that this guy did report that on that day and was told, we know who did it. He left his information for them to follow up if they wanted, and they didn't. And in my theory, the guy believes Stephen was guilty because everything in the press at that time back then, when you don't have internet as big as it is today, that Stephen was guilty. And that Bobby helped, did something with that car. Whatever. I'm going to go on with my life. Stephen's guilty. Then he watches Making a Murderer, and you see, well, we all saw, oh my God, this guy is innocent. So he calls String and Buting. Nobody calls him back. How much is the guy supposed to do? I don't blame him for assuming at that point, well, maybe they just don't believe me. Because it's just me saying I saw this. He doesn't have pictures. Maybe he didn't even have a cell phone. Don't know. So is there no cell phone to see where his phone pinged off, blah, blah, blah? We don't know. So we just have to wait for Kathleen to tell more of the story. All right, so I've been gabbing for a long, long time. So I should bring this to a close. Thank you to everyone who has been sending us the screenshots of everything. I am not in those groups. I don't care to be in those groups. I haven't been in them since forever. But I do appreciate being kept up on what is going on in there. So I appreciate the people who have sent us those screenshots. And I'll continue calling the things like I see it. So, but summarizing today, bottom line is taking Dolores away from Stephen is just going to be bad for everybody. Put yourself in his shoes. Do not take his mother away from him. So, this should be the last live video I do for this week, unless something else blows up. We are scheduled to go live Wednesday next week to talk about the cadaver dogs and the flyover video. So any investigating you've done on those things, if you want to send my way for me to discuss on those, feel free to do that. We were supposed to do it this week, but now with all this news, we've been doing lives on that. So same thing could happen next week. If Kathleen drops who the second guy is, that's what we're going to discuss, So, but thank you, everybody. And I just keep thinking about taking Dolores away from Stephen. I'm sorry. I need to, So, all right. I'm really going to go. Investigation continues. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next week.